Hello, everybody. Welcome to this conversation. My name is Sam Stein. I'm the head of marketing at Aris Global, and I'm joined by Pat, who's our chief product officer. Pat, you want to say hello?
Hey, everybody. Pat Jenakanandhini. I'm the chief product officer at Aris Global. Happy to be here today.
Awesome. So I think this is a conversation we've been looking forward to for a long time. We have just rolled out something that we're very excited about, which is our annual report on automation adoption in the life sciences industry. And there was a lot of work that went into this report, a lot of very interesting insights that were gathered. We basically, sent a call out to people across the industry, across different R&D functions, whether it was safety, clinical, medical affairs, regulatory affairs, to solicit insights around how they've adopted automation, what flavors of automation they have adopted, if any. And we pulled it together into one cohesive report. Shameless plug, that report is available on our website for everybody to read, and we're really proud of the finished product. But long story short, I think we saw some really interesting insights in there. So I wanted to do a quick debrief with Pat, given his unique point of view as our chief product officer. And so Pat, with this report in mind, I think some of the insights that we saw, not surprisingly, based on the work that we do, we saw that automation and safety was definitely probably an area where adoption was the strongest. So, people have been talking about automation and safety for a long time. There are certain, so-called cognitive automation use cases that are now getting out there into the wild. I know we've, as a company, have been working on that for a long time and have gone live now with customers with some of those, AI, machine learning type technologies. So from your perspective, if you look across what's happening in the R&D landscape and from your seat as the chief product officer, how do you look at product development and how does automation fit into that? When you're building a suite like LifeSphere, what role does automation play in how you plan, develop, and build that type of solution?
Yeah, so what we look at as a product organization, right? Like we look at 4 strategic pillars across our roadmaps, across all of our products. Compliance, innovation, platform, and insights. And the AI ML piece, what you talked about, the automation, squarely fits into that innovation bucket, because we think that there's a lot of technology that's out there that's been invented by various organizations and various applications, and we're barely scratching the surface on all that innovation that we can bring to life sciences R&D. And we've done that with RPA type systems. These tend to be bolt-ons, but then we have also done it with AI ML models in our safety application. We have plans to do that across our portfolio. But I wouldn't even stop there. Like there's more that we could do in terms of applying technology, like data lakes and starting to get more insights from our data, et cetera. There's a lot going on in that innovation pillar. I know you're specifically asking about automation, but within automation, we've done some work. There's more that we can do when it comes to efficiencies that can be gained, not just in safety, but across all of our domains.
And to that point, us being a customer-focused organization, obviously you build these applications with the end user and the end customer in mind. And we see the reality that in our industry, historically, it has lagged behind from a technology adoption perspective. Many of our customers are large global organizations, and you see, sometimes there are obstacles to adopting new technologies for whatever, many reasons. What do you think needs to happen over the coming years in order to take the adoption that we see in this report, which is safety, picking up momentum, clinical kind of just scratching the surface, regulatory, same thing, medical affairs, some lightweight use cases. What needs to happen over the coming years to see the adoption of automation and those advanced technologies increase? I guess the question would be both like within those companies and then with the quality of the technology that's out there. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I think a lot of this is you need to see some successes, right? I think a lot of customers are waiting to see what other customers are doing. They don't want to be the first ones in the pack to lead with this. So they want to see what other customers are doing. Once they start to see that success, you're going to see a lot more people, jumping into it. And I think what I would say where we are right now is that we see like a wave of adoption coming, in these automation technologies across our portfolio. That's just going to continue, and we're not stopping either. Like what we have automated so far is not what the end of the road. There's a lot more that we can do in terms of automating the various processes. And then, from a wider perspective, when you look at the life sciences industry as a whole, you mentioned this is a very conservative industry, kind of lags behind the technology adoption curve. I think that is also changing. You're seeing a new wave of kind of CIOs that are coming into these organizations and challenging these organizations to think differently. And think not just from moving from on-prem to cloud, but also to start thinking differently about the data, thinking differently about automation, and embracing the technology. And I think what COVID has done the last couple of years has essentially accelerated that trend, right? Like you had companies that were already investing in it, and now they're like, okay, we can't hire people fast enough, we can't train people fast enough. It's difficult to do case processing the same way that we used to do it before. We need to invest in more automation, and so therefore, we're starting to see some investment in that regard as well. And you see that in customers and CIOs making those decisions on digital transformation initiatives across our companies. And not a week goes by without me reading some pharma company announcing a major digital transformation initiative within their organization.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I think that one way to look at it could be that the lag in just technology adoption was probably largely from so much of software being on premise. Upgrades were painful, they took a long time. And so it was almost like there was a hesitation first to move to cloud. And so they were kind of laggards. Our industry has been, somewhat behind and moved to cloud. But now that most companies have embraced the cloud, they're actually seeing the benefits, such as avoiding these costly implementations, getting upgrades delivered over the cloud that ensure compliance. And so now that compliance is almost assumed as table stakes, there is a more ability to focus on adopting new technologies. And so I think I agree with you. I think we've seen that accelerate. I think all across our business, because we obviously play in safety, clinical, regulatory, medical affairs. So yeah, very interesting.
I think the comparison that I make is to another very conservative industry, financial industry, right? And historically, that's another organization, very heavily regulated, very conservative in adopting technology, but you've seen a dramatic shift. I mean, anybody who's got a bank account knows that you don't go into the teller anymore. You can just deposit your checks with your phone. You just take a photo of it, and that's technology. That's saving, it's not automation, but it is real innovation that's saving people time. The legacy ACH transfer used to take 3 days. Now you can Venmo somebody, thousands of dollars in 2 clicks on your phone, right? And that embrace of that technology has happened in other industries, and I think it's going to happen again in life sciences, because you're seeing industry after industry getting disrupted by innovative technology, and it's going to happen in life sciences. And I think it is happening. You're starting to see a lot more companies adopt technology like this.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that end of getting everybody to the cloud was the first battle, which allowed things to accelerate. And now your point about COVID, I think, is another interesting one, which has been more accelerant added into the equation. One other thing I wanted to ask, while we're talking about, automation is a broad category, right? I mean, there's different flavors of it. You alluded to it before, RPA. There's more advanced cognitive automation. There's natural language processing. These are things that, if you look at a Gartner hype cycle, years ago, they would be at the top of the hype cycle. I think now what we're seeing is actually being realized, which is great to see. If you look out in the future right now, I mean, are there things that you see as a chief product officer out in the market, whether it's ours or outside of life sciences, that get you excited for the future? I mean, what are some of those future technologies that excite you right now?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that within the AI ML field right now, we've got models that are out there, and then these models, you can start to enable them to become self-learning. And that's a key piece that I think we've got something people in production. We're starting to see real life data, coming through these systems. Getting that model to be self-aware and starting to learn, I think, is a key next step. And I think part of that is also building confidence with the regulators that these models are good, they produce good outcomes, there's good precision on them, getting them to feel comfortable with that. I think that's a key piece of it. And I think the same, this happened in banking as well, right? Like I keep going back to banking because the regulators there also needed some trust that the technology is going to work to prevent fraud and things like that. And I think we're seeing the same thing. I think that's going to happen. Another, technology that I would say, I don't think we have applications for it just yet, but I feel like, blockchain, and people think about Bitcoin and all of that. I'm not saying Bitcoin in pharma, but the underlying technology, blockchain, has some really interesting applications for like clinical trials, for example. Being able to have, people, sign off on a trial, like an inspection, a site inspection report, and having that simultaneously updated in different locations from the sponsor to the CRO or the actual, maybe the trial subject themselves. I think there's some real interesting applications there that have not been really, haven't surfaced yet. I think it's a technology. I'm loath to say that there's going to be a application for it, but I think that the technology is malleable enough that I sense that there will be an application for it. I just don't know. I can't tell you right now, like what that is going to be. It's not on our roadmap next year.
So not an NFT, but
yeah, not an NFT. So
because I'm buying.
No doubt, but yeah, so maybe I'll do my own coin.
I'll buy that too. I'll buy anything right now.
Yeah. No, but look, I think, like I said, I think the underlying technology is very, very interesting. I read a lot of different applications about it. There is a little bit of a craze right now, and like you said, it's the hype cycle, right? Like it's anything fintech, anything Bitcoin, it's all the rage right now. And I think the application for it is real interesting, like the underlying technology. How can you apply that to a regulated environment like life sciences? And when you look at what blockchain provides, it's that trust, right? Like that it's a common register across multiple parties. That trust is one of the foundations of life science, right? Like everybody's got to trust the data. And I think that's right there, I can see like, okay, I can tell you that there's going to be an application there. That I think it's going to be a matter of time, whether it's us or somebody else that figures that out first.
Yeah, so like distributed ledger, chain of custody as it applies to clinical trials and even like safety data. It's definitely an interesting area. I know we've talked about this before, but it seems like the future also, and maybe this is slightly more near term or tangible, is on the data side. So much interesting stuff going on with whether they're data specific companies that are out there right now. How do you look at that? I mean, where does that fit within the overall context of future of life sciences technology?
Absolutely. I mean, like you mentioned, right? Like there's a lot of resistance historically to moving to the cloud. Now that you're in the cloud, there's all kinds of interesting applications that you can start doing with it. And what I mean is, like, it's not saying, okay, oh, we're gonna become the Google and start mining the data and all of that. That's not what I'm saying. I think there's applications, benefits that each customer can derive for themselves, right? For example, can you benchmark against yourself of how quickly you process cases? Are you processing cases more efficiently this year compared to last year? Did something happen? Is your case volume? People measure that. I think that's a very rudimentary metric, but more interesting is how complex are your workflows? And then now you start to say, okay, now can you compare yourself against peers of similar size and scale, right? If your processes are taking you, making this up, let's say 20 hours to process a case, but a similar peer, and all of this, of course, is anonymized, and nobody can know who it is, etc. But if we can say, look, another company that processes similar case volume as what you do does this in less hours. I think that opens up some interesting avenues of investigation to understand, is there more efficiency that can be gained out of it? There may not be, but I think it's the data that tells the picture, as opposed to what happens today is that people go on gut intuition. They say, oh, our processes are very thorough, and it's very much based on an individual who works at a company, and that, like, this is the process we follow, and it's really not based on any data that is guiding that assertion, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Seems like there are millions of cases processed annually, and using that, getting a better understanding of what that throughput looks like, benchmarking, brings value to customers, because then you can say to them, here's how you compare against the field. Here's the areas we've identified within your process where there are areas for improvement. And also here's how technology can help with that. What about, the last question I'll ask is just around, there's a lot about data lakes. You hear data cloud being thrown around a lot. How are you thinking about something like that? Because I think there's a direct tie-in with automation and some of these next generation technologies. But talk to me about that just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think these terminologies are all somewhat of a buzzword. Like, everybody says, oh, we have a data lake, and if you ask them, like, okay, explain that to me, and you find out that they really don't know what that means. I think what we are trying to go towards, and we talked about this in our breakthrough conference, is a vision that we're calling data fabric. And we're not trying to be the be all and end all for all customers. What we want to enable is try to bring together different data sources, whether it's our own application, a third-party application, or publicly available data, or other data stores that our customers may be subscribing to. So, for example, prescription data, for example. If our customers are getting that from a different source, like a pharmacy chain or something like that, how can we ingest all that data and make it available for them in a platform? Well, ultimately, what we want to do is, life science companies are in the business of producing and discovering life-saving innovations, right? As anything that we can do to help them towards that goal and make sure that their doctors, their physicians, they're really smart people who are working on these things are not doing admin level work, trying to figure out, what's going on in the data using Excel or any other like off-the-shelf tools. That is something that we are very, very interested in, and that's not something that we want to focus on. And we think that this data fabric vision is going to enable us to build a lot of compelling different workflows across these applications. And I think we are in the early days of that. I think we're going to make some proof points along the way. I think we've got some already. There's going to be more that we'll be delivering over the course of next couple of years.
Yeah, I know. Without revealing too much, I know we got some exciting stuff planned for next year. Yeah, and I think that aggregation of data and then the application of so-called intelligent technology on top of that, to your point, can unlock significant value for the industry. Cool. So I think that brings us to the end here. I just wanted to give another shameless plug for our report. It's a sweeping survey of the industry around automation trends and adoption. It's available from our website, so please access the link we'll provide, and you can go check it out and download it. And one final plug, we are also going to be running this survey again next year. It's open to the public, open to members of our industry. You'll be hearing more from us about that, but when you see that survey out there, we'd love if you could take it, give your thoughts, your opinions, and have your voice heard, and we'll see you next year. So thanks, Pat. Great talking to you. We'll talk soon.
Hey, thanks, Sam. Have a great weekend.
All right, bye for now.